New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani says he'll be holding negligent landlords accountable as part of his block-by-block housing plan.
And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards. Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits, or even the tenants themselves.
According to Hellgate NYC, the objective for those properties, according to the plan, will be not to force compliance, something the city has long since given up on, but instead to force landlords to sell their portfolios to responsible preservation purchasers approved by both tenants and the city. The plan also promises to build 200,000 affordable and rent-stabilized units and preserve 200,000 more. Now, in Montreal, Mayor Soraya Martinez-Ferrada has walked back Airbnb restrictions, as well as the 2020 rule to focus on lowering the construction costs of housing. She's also partnered with private developers to build 2,500 social housing units. Meanwhile, a third of Quebec's social housing is in disrepair, and waitlists for these units are long. As July 1st rolls around, the city is anticipating more families will be left on the streets, increasing funding for homelessness prevention by $3.4 million.
I think what everyone wants to know is, could this happen here?
Yes and no. In Montreal, the city does have the power to expropriate buildings. They just never use that power. They also have the first right of purchase for certain properties, which they have used to acquire buildings. The differences between Montreal and New York City, obviously, New York City has a way bigger budget. They have way more people, but they have a way bigger budget. They have more billionaires to tax. They have, they also are allowed to run a deficit, unlike Montreal.
Yeah, it's against the law for any city in Quebec to run a deficit, which really limits long-term planning.
Yeah.
And it makes you a lot more dependent on, going to Daddy Warbucks in Quebec City and asking for more money, and that's never really efficient.
Yeah, and also Quebec's social housing is, like, whenever the city builds social housing, it also has to be with the province, too.
And the federal government.
And the federal government. So there's less sort of independence, I guess, in terms of building. Like, the city can establish the actual deals and stuff like that, but they kind of have to go through all levels of government.
3 levels of government whose priorities align, which almost never happens.
Yeah, and it's not that, like, there's a recognition clearly from the mayor that we need more social housing. Like, she's agreed to build these units with in partnership with a private company, which, some people would rather the city be doing it themselves, but like the Mamdani government, they're also planning on doing some of this with private partnerships. Mock developers say that they're able to cut the cost per unit in half. I don't know what that would actually look like, but yeah, that's Group Mac is the name of the developer that's helping out with the 2,500 social housing units. There's a different definition here of affordable housing compared to what Mamdani's talking about when he says affordable housing. Here in Montreal, we hear affordable housing used almost interchangeably with social housing. It's not the same thing. Social housing is like controlled, regulated by the government, subsidized by the government. Affordable,
often it's like a percentage of your monthly income.
Yes, exactly. Affordable just means relative to the market, which, as we know, is hugely inflated right now.
It's doubled in the last 10 years.
It's doubled in the last 10 years. So affordable just means relative to the market. It's affordable. It's like around the median or whatever. It's not actually really comparing with salaries. It's comparing to the rent of other properties. And there's been a huge concentration of ownership of properties across Canada, but specifically in Montreal. There's, like, in the past decade, there's been a huge concentration of that. So it makes it so, like, 1% of landlords in the city, according to a study published in 2023, own about 32% of le parc locatif de Montréal, of the rental units. That's crazy. So the market is being dictated by a smaller and smaller number of people, right?
And because of the financialization of housing, you have these projects. You might have someone who buys a duplex. It's not just one landlord, it's like 20 investors.
Yeah.
So everybody can get in on it,
exactly.
Right? And for those investments to pay off, the value of the real estate has to go up. And for you to be able to sell the property, you have to be able to prove that you're charging your tenants a lot.
Yeah.
So that you'll get your money back. So we all, as a society, end up, it's like it's our responsibility to subsidize the profits of the richest 1%.
Yeah, like one of the things that Martinez Ferrada's platform had was, we're going to offer more rent subsidies. And it's like, that's just a transfer of tax dollars to landlords. That's all that is. Like, yes, the individual tenants might get some reprieve, which I'm not denying is, that's obviously going to improve people's lives. But at the end of the day, you're actively contributing to the inflation of rent prices by doing that.
You're rewarding the landlord for your, with a public subsidy.
So what's really interesting about Mamdani's housing plan is there's a real acknowledgement of the fact that landlords are making things more expensive, right? That like, it's not just some mystical, oh, the market's so bad right now and there's so many people and not enough houses. Like, yes, supply, especially of social housing, rent stabilized housing, needs to increase. That is true. But at the same time, like, there was this announcement, I wrote about this, about building a bunch of units, like 6,000 to 8,000 units along the Blue Line extension, right?
Yeah.
And I was pushing the STM because they're going to be beneficiaries of this. I was like, okay, so how many of these units, who's going to be making money off of this other than you? Like, who's going to be the landlord, essentially? Is it going to be social housing, affordable housing? They couldn't tell me. They're just saying they're going to build more without specifying who is going to actually, how these rents will be determined. And when you build a new complex in Montreal, a new residential complex for 5 years, you don't have to worry about the TAL standard of rent increase, which is also, as we know, getting bigger and bigger. Like this year was lower. Last year it was like 6%.
A record increase,
like, so it's like, you're telling me you're building all these units and like, yes, obviously we need more housing supply. I'm not going to deny that. But to build more supply without actually addressing the fact that there is an incentive to charge as much as possible and there's a greater concentration of ownership of these properties, it seems illogical.
Yeah.
Even when Mark Carney was last year, I point blank asked him this.
I remember you were working on a story.
I was working on a story.
Yeah.
And I was like, for you guys in that converse, and I asked him, I was like, okay, so you're building a bajillion houses and apartment buildings. I didn't say the word bajillion to Mark Carney at the press conference, but I was like, you're planning on accelerating and building all of this housing. Who's going to set the rents? Because in new developments, the vacancy rates are higher in luxury, obviously. And if all of these units are just left up to the market, they're going to keep going up. That's just what's going to happen.
Supply is not a problem when you have money.
Exactly.
The vacancy rates on expensive apartments are something like 6 to 8%. Mm-hmm. On cheaper apartments, it's like 1.5%.
Yeah, so, and a lot of those are in disrepair. Even outside of the social housing, we see story after story of negligent landlord, like letting the unit sort of like you're paying them essentially in theory so that they maintain the building, right?
Yeah.
And even outside of social housing, the affordable units, it's hard to find a good landlord who is actually taking care of their housing.
I mean, when the Minister of Housing in the province is asked what we should do to improve the rent crisis, the housing crisis, she says, oh, you should invest in real estate. Like, we have a political class.
Just buy your house. Just buy your house. I would love to buy my apartment. I can't afford to.
No.
Like, are you kidding? I can't afford that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
When you see yourself more in the developer and when you think that there's a bunch of different directions this could go in, mm-hmm. but we as a society, that's a great way to start a sentence. We as a society have lost faith in our ability to do things without the private sector. Mm-hmm. We always have to partner with the private mm-hmm. sector so that it'll cost us less. But in the long term, it always ends up costing us more. Yeah. The private sector has so much influence in the mayor's office. We mm-hmm. spoke about that last week. It is not, and like, we don't have any magic solutions. Mm-hmm. There's definitely some things that are helping, but the overall impression I get is that 200,000 social housing units in New York City,
like that are rent stabilized.
It's
like
it's a dream on steroids.
It's almost like talking about the actual issue of profiting from rent is like taboo here. Yeah. Like even I remember during lockdown, everyone, like people are starting to get served, blah, blah, blah. There was no nationwide rent freeze. There was no moratorium. Like some cities had moratoriums on evictions, but like.
Well, so much of our economy is dependent on these houses gaining value, being sold, and
It's very financialized, and it seems as though landlords and property developers, that's the one group of people that is not allowed to lose money. Like in most other businesses, you're making an investment, it's a risk, right?
Too big to fail.
But then when it comes to rent profits, it's like,
Oh,
yeah.
no, don't.
So anyway, it was when I saw the announcement that the city of New York was actually going to actively start expropriating buildings from these landlords that they've told time and time again, deal with this. And it's often huge companies that own a bunch of different units, right? They're targeting the top 10 worst landlords first and are going to go from there.
But I mean, it's also like, it's a plan.
It's a plan.
It hasn't been executed yet.
It hasn't been executed yet, but they have literally already started doing these cellar to ceiling or cellar to roof inspections where the city is like going in and actually going to evaluate the state of things. And we have some regulations here that are supposed to be respected, but it doesn't seem, even when an illegal Airbnb is signaled, it doesn't seem like anything really happens beyond maybe a fine, which they take as a cost of doing business. Yeah. So it was just, I was surprised, and we'll see how it goes. Obviously, there's already, I know some people are taking issue with like the private public partnerships in New York City, and the sort of some of the units that were supposed to have a rent freeze might not after all. Like there's some things going on, and we'll see how this goes. But yeah, for now, someone's actually acknowledging the root of the housing crisis, which was kind of insane to see.